Good evening, Amanda. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Well, thank you for the interview. So you are running for school board, right?
That is correct. Southwest Allen County.
Southwest Allen County. Okay. And what makes you want to run for the school board?
Well, to be honest with you, it was almost a year ago
Mhm.
that I just started learning more about what was happening in our school system. And my initial research and inquiry into some of the things that were happening, some of the mandates,
Right.
um, it really wasn't from a political perspective. It was really just coming from a mom being
Hmm.
concerned. I never had any political ambition to run for school board or any political position.
Right.
So, but I had actually I had been on a private Facebook page that I thought was not private, but it was. And I
Mm.
had learned that another school district had already made decisions about their back to school or return to school plan that was required for
Mm.
the following school year. And I was quite shocked that they were making a decision so prematurely, and it seemed to be very an aggressive return to school. We were at a stage with the pandemic
Mm.
where businesses were opening back up. Mask had just been determined to be no longer mandatory by our governor. And so I was shocked to hear that the school on the other side of Allen County was going to open 4 months later with a mask mandate. So
Um,
I had responded to that Facebook page comment about it, just simply saying, "Wow, I'm shocked. That seems awfully, premature and aggressive." And immediately I got attacked by several people named Anonymous.
wow.
and I thought, wow, this is interesting. Why are people still wanting their kids to go to school in mask?
Right.
And so I was very quickly, I learned that this Facebook page that I was responding to was in fact private. And so within about 20 minutes, created my own Facebook page
Hmm.
called for SACS, Patriot Parents,
Hmm.
and posted it on their page and said, clearly we have a difference of opinion. They were blocking my comments. So
Okay.
within a very short period of time, I had 100 followers.
Oh,
So
wow.
I knew I wasn't the only one that was concerned. Um, and then I didn't want to have a relationship with our school district that was volatile. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. They hadn't made
Right.
their decision. And so I first reached out to the board president, and expressed my concerns. This was April of last year,
Okay.
and asked that they put on the agenda not only the mask requirements or return to school, but also the federal funding. Because
Right.
in my research of trying to understand why a school would be so egregious so soon, I learned that there was federal funding that was coming from the American Rescue Plan under the Biden administration
Hmm.
that was basically dictating to some degree how the schools would open, specifically that they would adhere to the CDC guidelines as well as incorporating a certain percentage of their funding towards SEL.
Right. Yeah.
So that took me down a whole other rabbit hole of research, understanding what is SEL. Uh,
Hmm.
so obviously, I quickly learned that that was a part of CASEL and did my research on that global organization, and it just started becoming. I had this aha moment as a mom. I started feeling like the masks were more really somewhat of a distraction, but also a means to possibly, make our children kind of dehumanize them.
Right.
my interest, early on before I set into my career has always been in child psychology. I'm certainly not a psychologist,
Mhm.
but a lot of my undergraduate study was in psychology. I was always interested in child development. I ended up, getting a degree in criminal justice and then a master's degree in business development. But I worked with juveniles and juvenile detention centers and things like
Oh,
that early on. I worked
okay.
with a lot of in a lot of residential facilities for women and children, things like that. So my heart's there, when it comes to kids, and then you add the mom factor onto it.
Right.
I was just I thought, wow, why is the Biden administration getting so involved in this process and pushing SEL? It seemed to be a multitude of things that were happening. And as you've seen over the last couple of years, we've had lots of indoctrination being pushed into our schools, lots of different types of ideology. And, it may appear that it's coming in from, certain groups, but to be honest with you, I just feel like it's a bigger issue of a cultural revolution. It seems
Right.
Marxist in nature, and I feel that the masking in itself, getting the kids to conform and listen and keep their mouth shut and not, people stop making eye contact. It's really it really was dehumanizing to our kids, and I think it affected them emotionally, academically, socially,
Right.
on so many levels. And so
Right.
really a big thing for me to push to keep that from happening in our district. And I was fortunate between, I was able to get enough parents to start showing up at board meetings. In fact,
Mm.
one, we had well over 100 parents there.
Wow.
I also did a petition, change.org, and had, I think, over 6,000 signatures, and was having the governor get copies of that on a regular basis.
Wow.
Um,
That's amazing.
so,
Yeah.
so that was the beginning of it.
Mm. Okay. Well, talk about SEL. Actually, I spent a couple months doing research on that. So I published the article just a couple weeks ago. It's basically is to expose the new age beginning of the organization, CASEL.
Mhm.
Yeah. And uh, the CASEL, the co-founders of CASEL, Daniel
Mhm.
Goldman, actually, he is a big follower of the Dalai Lama. He
Mhm.
actually wrote 3 books with the Dalai Lama. So the whole thing is really just a new age religion and slip in under this social emotional learning.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And then you look at the other people who are funding
Mhm.
that organization, and you've got the Bill Gates Foundation,
Right,
you've got Zuckerberg, you
right.
have a multitude of other non-family Marxist, blatantly Marxist organizations. And so people don't realize where SEL came from. That is exactly where it came from.
Right.
And their mission, their global mission, I mean, they support, more of a socialism / communist type
Mhm.
approach towards education. And clearly what happens, there are people that see opportunity, people like Zuckerberg seeing opportunity here to be able to
Mhm.
get into the minds of children, which goes right along the lines with his investment into Panorama Inc. I mean, and
Yeah.
so we have to quit being so naive as parents and citizens, and not thinking of this as there's a bigger play at heart. I think,
It is.
yeah. I mean, some people have maybe a financial interest, and then others have a power control interest, or
Yeah.
both.
Well, CASA has 3 co-founders, and do you know the other 2?
Well, I mean, some of the funders, the other two outside of Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, and my understanding was Hillary Clinton. The Clinton Foundation was the first large chunk of investment
Probably.
that went
Yeah.
that really got them launched,
Right.
because they weren't getting a lot of attention the original founders of CASEL initially.
Yeah, actually, the first foundation which gave the kind of like seed money is called the Fesser Institute. Now, Fesser Institute basically is, if you look at their website and their founders, is really just New Age religion. And the founder himself believed that he was reincarnated several times. And one of the time he was Apostle Paul. So he was kind of, you know, being with Jesus. It's just kind of weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then it has three co-founders. One is Daniel Goleman. Basically, he actually wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. So the whole thing is based on his book, his research. And the other two, one actually is from Kennedy family, a member of Kennedy family, and the other is a member of the Rockefeller family. So they do have a pretty influential backers of that organization.
Absolutely. And then you look at their board and everybody else that's involved. I mean, there are a lot of people invested in this platform.
Oh, yeah.
And why is it so important? Is it, you know, is it because they really care about my kid?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
You know, but sadly, there are parents out there that believe, and teachers, you know, and you've got you know your teachers unions, your school associations, your college professors telling everyone this is great, this is how we're going to help these kids.
Right.
You know, and you know, these kids that have parents that don't love them and don't take care of them, and there are bad parents out there, and there are kids that need help, don't get me wrong. And I'm not suggesting that we don't need programs and things in place, but I think we need to be very careful to not so quickly just adopt everything that the federal government pushes down into the school system. I think we should always be questioning what their true intention is, because when people start to believe that the federal government has their best interests and cares about their kids, I mean, I think they're hallucinating.
Very true. They do have a track record on that. They really don't care from the government. Yeah, and also
some of these young college students, they believe it. I mean, I've had young college students, you know, literally try to tell me, you know, the federal government cares about people. They're going to pay our college loans. They care about us. You know.
Yeah. Well, I guess about once you get to the real world, hopefully she'll wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was young, I was kind of liberal, and you know, I'm really for socialism. But
I think all young people are liberal at heart, because they don't understand how the system works.
Right.
You literally think that the money grows on the trees, and why can't, you know, if Elon Musk makes this much money, why doesn't he just, you know, pay for everybody out of poverty? There's the solution, right? You know, print more money. I mean, it just seems it seems so easy, but you know, obviously, as we grow and start to participate in our communities and have families and see how the institutions and organizations and things of that nature work, we understand that. But
well, it definitely, there is a educational industrial complex. A lot of people are making money out of the public education because the government is pumping a lot of money into it. Right. If you look at like even our Indiana, we more than half the budget actually goes to education.
And you know, it's amazing. It's almost like we have got all these organizations that are also involved in education right now, and and I question, you know, what exactly are they doing? Why do we have all these layers of government? And do we really need the Indiana Department of Education?
Right.
What exactly are they doing? You know, and we have seen, and when you look at the performance of our students, even here in Indiana, all over the country, and you compare us to other countries. I mean, here we are in the United States, learning about social emotional learning and different genders and how many ways to recycle your plastics. Meanwhile, you've got kids in communist countries who are learning 3 different languages. I mean, I'm not suggesting that communism is good, but I mean, from an educational, perspective,
Right.
what exactly are we doing? We're not preparing our children to be critical thinkers and to be productive citizens. And all of this ideological and political propaganda that is permeating and being pushed into our schools and embraced by the teachers and promoted. I mean, it's really absurd. It's sad, and it's frustrating for me to
Yeah.
watch, because it is confusing our children, teenagers, young adults. They have already such a difficult time navigating.
Right.
They're hormonally imbalanced. They've got all of the social pressure. They're trying to figure out their identity, which, when I say identity, I don't mean if they're a boy or a girl.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
it's never been a confusing aspect
Right.
before, with the exception of a small percentage. And gender dysphoria is a mental health condition, and it shouldn't be glorified, shouldn't be promoted,
Mhm.
shouldn't be, it shouldn't be normalized.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And certainly not to take away from any child or adult that is suffering from that. It's a serious condition.
Right.
But here we have this cult-like push to normalize all these varying sexual orientations and pushing it on young children. They
Right.
don't, I mean, they don't know. They're not even thinking about that stuff. And thank God they didn't do this when I was 11. I would have been a boy by now. I was climbing trees and catching snakes. And I mean, they would have been like, put her on puberty blockers.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just absurd. We need to let kids be kids. They shouldn't be having these conversations in school. This and some of this, and some of it, I know it's social media that doesn't help. TikTok. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But the school should be a safe place for our children.
Right. Right. But which is not the case anymore, because, like you mentioned, now all those things actually push down even to the kindergarten level.
Mhm.
I mean, that the kids will be so confused by that. If
They will,
especially
they don't know how to go home and tell mom, hey mom, we're being taught CRT, or I was told I could be a boy today
right.
instead of a girl. They don't even know how to have those conversations. They don't even know how to process that. But it is being pushed on some of these kids. I will say that the northern part of Indiana is certainly more conservative, and we've been fortunate that maybe a lot of it's not in our schools, but to think that it's not there at all, or that it's not coming there, I think is very naive.
Right.
And what I have been stressing to people in my community, again, thankfully it's not a huge problem, but these books are in there. I
Right.
found we've got kids dressing up like cats and dogs. Is
Right.
it all
Yeah.
of them? No, but how many do we need to have before we say it's a problem?
Yeah.
I mean, how many of these sexually explicit books do we need to have before we say it's a problem? How many teachers do we need to have incorporating a critical race pedagogy
Right.
into their teachings before it's a problem? I
Right.
mean, we need to be proactive, not reactive, and clearly we can't rely on legislation to do that for us.
No.
So
No. No.
school
Yeah.
board and parents are going to need to do this.
Right. The parents has to get involved. The parents has to take over the school board.
Mhm.
Otherwise, like you mentioned, we just cannot count on the legislation. And I was kind of involved with like 2 bills, SB 17 and HB 1134. I gave testimonies on there. I mean, it won't take long that you realize that they are just playing games.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I actually drove down to the State House and testified for SB 17 as well. He
Mm.
was probably there the same day you were, when
Right.
perhaps. And it is clearly they ended up catering to the Library Association. I mean, this is ridiculous. I think even in the statute, I think when you look at the exclusion for sexual materials,
Right.
it doesn't meet the definition of educational. So, I mean, it's just preposterous. And
Right.
I worked in law enforcement for 16 years
Mhm.
prior to my career in business ownership. And I was actually a sex offender specialist.
Mm,
I primarily worked with sex offenders, mentally ill, and violent offenders. And I think to myself, I mean, we are push over sexualizing our children
right,
with all of this content, all of this conversation, these books. I mean, we are literally creating victims for pedophiles. And
right.
so is that the intent of the National Library Association? I'm not here to say that's their intent, but there's certainly people out there that are going, "Oh, this is awesome." They've literally got people working in their favor, to create all these sexualized children. I mean, it's disgusting.
It is.
It's shameful. I mean, our kids have a right to be children, and their minds are developing. They don't need to be influenced by all of these adults that are random authors all over the country that they write these books. They have these editorials, these companies that write these glowing reviews saying that it's age appropriate. No,
No, it's not.
I don't know who these people are. They're just trying to make money, and we
Yeah.
cannot trust these publishing companies to
No,
review the books for our
no.
children, because the stuff that I've been finding in our schools, even in our conservative schools here in northern Indiana, it's atrocious. So that's another
Wow.
private Facebook page that I recently created that's gotten a lot of heat, and that I call it ABC Advisory Book Club. Uh,
Mm,
and so, it's just like I keep doing more research and finding more books, and
wow.
it's overwhelming. I don't know that all of the schools, I don't know that the school boards and the superintendents and the teachers are aware that all these books are in there, because they're not reading every single book. They're not reading every page. But I do believe wholeheartedly there are some librarians, there are some people in the media department and teachers that are actually pushing and promoting some of these books because
Right.
they actually think it's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would question whether or not they're appropriate to be working with children.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's overstepping their boundaries. They don't have the right to do that. And then we see things like what is it, the School Counselor Association,
Mm.
ASCA. If you look at their guidance, they're telling school counselors to have these conversations about transgender
Ugh,
with students privately, to adhere to, if the student says, call me this name and refer to me by this pronoun, and I don't want my parents to know, this organization is recommending that
wow.
the counselors keep it a secret and not tell the parents. In fact, go above and beyond by not telling the parents and refer to the student by their real name when talking to the parents, and even going so far as to counsel the students on hormone blockers
Right.
and other more extreme measures such as surgery. I mean, this is absurd. They do not have the right to do that. I think that's child abuse, and
Hmm.
for an organization to come out and promote that
Yeah.
as if it's some sort of defense towards inclusiveness. I mean, certainly I know there are children out there that are struggling with their sexuality, and maybe their parents aren't supportive and possibly even abusive. Those are that's not okay. And obviously, a counselor is probably that first point of contact many times that these students had. That's a little bit different. Uh,
Right.
but they're literally promoting that they not even talk to the parents, and many times parents are not aware
Hmm.
that it's to this extent, and some of this seems a bit grooming, and just because grooming is always associated to sex, but you can groom a child to make decisions,
Right.
so influencing a child's mindset, particularly over something so serious as
Mhm.
their sexual orientation and identity, and
Wow.
influencing them to do things that they can't undo to their body.
Right.
That is going way too far.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you saw in Florida, Governor DeSantis actually put together a bill prohibiting that. It's
Mm.
unfortunate because there was an incident where that happened. And I'm sure there was more. And if there's one, there's going to be more.
Right. Well, I mean, I think just in the past 2 years, I think more and more parents have realized that they just cannot trust the, they cannot trust the school board, they cannot trust the administrations, they cannot even trust the teachers, and they cannot trust the legislators. And so I think that's why it's important for parents like you actually to take action, actually to basically uh, get, I mean, take over the school board.
Well, and I think, even in the schools where maybe this isn't prevalent, I feel like if there isn't that barrier, that protection, uh,
Mhm,
that oversight, it's going to happen. It's going to become more prevalent.
mhm.
Parents do need to take a stand now.
Right,
If they're
right.
fortunate enough to be in a school district where this isn't hugely impacting, if they're not seeing a lot of it, they're fortunate and they need to get in there quickly, because before it becomes a major issue.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
because
you're saying in Hamilton County and other school
right,
districts
right.
across the country.
Yeah,
Um,
because this push is from top,
oh
from
yeah.
the uh, the
Well, it comes as high as the Biden administration
right,
when
right,
they're attaching funding to
right,
the things that are going into the school, and then it trickles down to the state
right.
Department of Education, and then of course everybody else is getting involved. The CDC's got their fingers in there. Next
Mhm,
thing you know, they're going to declare an emergency because of mental health, and
right.
they're going to want to push this comprehensive sex ed, which is disgusting.
Oh, it is.
They're not required to put that in the schools.
Mhm,
But a lot of schools are doing it. Why are they doing it? Are they being incentivized? I suspect that will be the next thing.
right.
I mean, this.
Yeah. So you do have, come from the federal government, from the state government, but also from the higher education, and
Mhm.
especially schools, I mean the college of education or school education, and a lot of young teachers have been trained in the past 20 years. They already been brainwashed into that mindset, right? And
Yeah,
now they are pushing down because you can start to see a lot of teachers think uh, parents,
they
shouldn't
think they
get
know better than
involved.
their parents,
Right,
and you know what? They actually believe in their heart. I think many of them that they
right,
are better for the children than the
right,
parents.
right.
And that's, I'm not here to say that there aren't some bad parents, and there are a lot of great teachers, but when you get this cultural change amongst teachers that they now have the right and obligation to make these sort of decisions, in general. They've become very entitled with their position of power and influence. And not all of them, but I'm talking about the ones that are actually doing these things.
Mhm.
And it's very concerning. And I don't think that they should be in education. I don't think people like that should be in education. I mean, certainly we need teachers that are caring, and I know how hard it is for many of these teachers' their jobs, particularly when they have difficult students and students with parents that aren't involved and
Right.
concerned. But to go from that extreme to where we are right now, where parents are stupid and parents shouldn't have a say. And I mean, ideally, most parents, we would love to just send our kids to school and them get an education, us not have to
Mhm.
worry about it. But parents have realized that there's more going on, and they're waking up, and they're starting to ask questions and get
Right.
information. And I mean, students this year, even in our schools, they started out first day of school and they had some teachers asking them, "What's your pronoun?" What? When did we start doing that? That's not acceptable.
Right.
We had a middle school yearbook last year, and there were pages of Black Lives Matter and
Yeah.
pages of George Floyd, all factually incorrect. I mean,
Right.
it's absurd. And this is a yearbook that these kids are going to have, keeping with them for many, many years.
Right.
And this year we had one of our schools had a magazine, and the editor let one of the students publish a 4-page spread of all the different genders you could be. And I mean, that's not okay.
No.
And everybody's afraid to speak up. I
Mhm.
think people are afraid to speak up because we're living in an emotional totalitarian moment where if you say anything, you are labeled a racist,
Right, right.
a homophobic. I mean, it's one thing. They attack you from all other levels, and people are so afraid to be labeled those things and to be censored and to lose their jobs and to
Right.
have their reputations. They're afraid to stand up. But
Mhm.
I call bull on it all,
Yeah.
and it's hurting our children and the parents that are sitting there being quiet or thinking that this stuff is okay. I mean, this is not good for our students. It's divisive. The violence in schools has increased. I mean, this is not helping
No.
race relations, I should
No.
say. It's making it worse.
Mhm.
You know, you
And it's by design. That's the intention, is to make it
absolutely.
worse.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people they can't see it. They can't see
Right.
the design. They can't see the tactics, and they can't recognize the bigger picture because many times the it's coming from up here, but the
Mhm.
people that are implementing it, they don't know that they are the soldiers of the
Right,
movement.
right.
They don't even know it.
Right.
And until you kind of step back and look and really ask yourself, is this really helping? I mean, telling our kids that our country is founded on systematic racism and that they're racist from the time that they're 2, and
Right.
they need to take a step back and let other people step up in order I mean, it's absurd.
It
And
is.
if we don't stop this absurdity, we're going to have a bunch of adults that are coming into our communities with a
Right,
lot of
right.
mental health problems, a lot of hatred for one another, hatred for our country.
Yeah. And also, you add on that, they don't really have a good education. They couldn't.
Oh, well, and that,
Yeah.
obvious.
Right. And then they couldn't usually function in society, so they turn into this bitter and angry, person. And that just
That's perfect for them to then become activists. You know what I
right,
mean? I mean, they become little pawns of the government.
right.
And, I mean, government shutting down all small businesses, all you're going to have is big box businesses. And then you have all your little worker bees. And
Right.
you want to activate them, it's just, I see what's happening.
Yeah.
I hope we're not too far along. I hope we can stop this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm helpful because there are parents like you who is stepping up. And I think, fortunately, in our country, the education is still locally controlled. School
Thank
board
God.
has a lot said into that.
Right.
And talking about the social activists, actually there is a change on the teachers, like older teachers. I mean, in the past, the goal of education is to prepare students for the real world, so that can be a functioning, they can work, they have the skills, and that was traditionally the goal of education. But in the past 20, 30 years, that has changed. And the goal of education has become to make the student into social activists. Yeah, actually, my wife went to IU Bloomington School Education doing her master there, and her professors actually told them that their job is to make social activists, and that's what's going on right now.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of friends whose kids are in college right now at a lot of our state universities, and for many of the professions, critical race theory. I mean, that's a required class.
Right.
So, all this talk about, oh, we're not teaching critical race theory. You're teaching the teachers a critical race pedagogy.
Right.
I mean, it's the way in which they're viewing their students. They're literally that's all they're thinking about. They should be focused on teaching the math and teaching the English,
Right,
you know. And I mean, it's absurd, but the students, the teachers, excuse me, they're brainwashed.
you're
They,
right.
they really are. And but I
Yeah.
think, you know, I think there's been lots of attempts at Marxist movements, you know, in this country, uh, over and over through
Mm,
generations. And you know, they've tried lots of different things. You know, socioeconomic doesn't necessarily work here in the United States like it might
right.
work in China and other countries, because we're just a blended country, and we're also,
Mm,
you know, we're capitalists. So we're
right,
like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and that
right.
apparently makes these Marxists very angry that
Mhm,
that actually works. I mean, you
right.
can do that, and I'm a living example of that. I grew up poor, and we were on food stamps. So
Mm,
you know, you can do that
right.
here, and we are a great country for that. But they want to get rid of that. And then they tried it with, you know, with race back, you know, during Martin Luther King days, and whether or not he was the one that thwarted that or not, I tend to think he was a huge influencer, and they would have much rather it been a huge upheaval of violence, much like Black Lives Matter. But that's not what happened.
Mhm,
And so that was a failed coup. And so now, you know, they're throwing in the CRT, the gender queer theories,
mhm,
all this stuff, and they're targeting our youth. But
right.
what they underestimated was the moms.
Right, exactly.
You know, there's a line that you can draw in the sand, and we don't care about anything else. I
Right,
mean, there's not too many things or people that I would jump in front of a truck for. And so when you start messing with my kid,
right,
uh, you're bringing out a different side of me.
right,
And I think that goes for a lot of moms and dads,
right.
and that's what we're seeing right now. You know, I think
Exactly.
people were giving the schools the benefit of the doubt. They didn't want to believe it, but you know, the truth is coming out, and people are seeing what's happening, and you know, seeing other people's intent. And like I said, even if you're fortunate, all these rural school districts that say, well, it's not here yet. It's
Yeah,
coming.
it's
It's
coming.
coming, because
Exactly.
they're coming out of the colleges, and
Right,
your older teachers are retiring,
right,
and they're keeping their mouth shut because they don't want to lose their pensions. And I know this because they are so scared to
right,
speak up. They
right.
really are. And we're losing generations of some fine teachers, many of them retiring early
Mhm,
because of this.
right,
And, you know, we're going to have a bunch of young teachers that are all they're coming in is trying to create social activists, like you said.
right.
And we're going to be in a world of hurt if we don't turn this around.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So how is your current school board?
So we have five people on our school board,
Mhm,
and there are two at-large seats that are going to be up for the November election.
okay.
And one of those seats actually just got filled through the board, because the former board member actually stepped down midterm. So
Mhm,
it's kind of a caucus, but it's done a little bit differently than a standard caucus. Instead of, you know, the precinct committee members voting, it's the remaining board members. So they had applications. They had quite a few. They had 29 applications.
oh,
Pretty,
wow.
pretty impressive. And I knew quite a few of the people that applied. I did not apply. Um, and a lot of people were confused as to why I wouldn't do that. And that was because I knew I wasn't going to get a majority vote. You would have
Right,
to get a majority vote. And so I certainly didn't want to give the naysayers the pleasure of saying no to me, because I'm
mhm,
not here to represent them.
right,
I'm here to represent our community. And if in fact our community wants more of a conservative approach, and somebody that's knowledgeable of what's going on and willing to speak up and stand up on behalf of these kids, then they're going to vote for me.
right,
And then I'll come in that way. But I don't want to be on the board if I can't add value and if people don't want me there.
right,
So
right.
I'm
Yeah,
happy to continue my campaign and be on the ballot for the November election. So
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I think your community is fortunate to have you. You know, you are really knowledgeable, and also your background, and those all help uh, for for you to be on the school board.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. I still sometimes chuckle at the fact that I'm running for a political position, but sometimes things happen in our lives and it just guides us in a
Right.
certain direction. And
But actually, I mean, that is not political though, right? That's not a political position. The
it's
school
not
board.
partisan, but I'll tell you, I don't think it's going to stay that way. I know there's been some push to make it so that it was not, but it is political. It has been politicized, and
Okay.
because of the political propaganda and
Mm,
because of the federal government's involvement
mm,
with all of the programming that's coming into our schools, how can
right.
it not be political? It really has become political, and so
Okay.
I think it's ever so more important for the community to know where their candidates and board members stand with regards to these topics.
Right.
And I mean, I hate to put a political party to it. I'd rather just say I'm conservative. I'm liberal at heart,
Hmm.
conservative on
Hmm.
many other measures. But I'm here to protect the kids,
Right.
and that I would just call it a parental position.
Yeah.
And I would hope that regardless of what party someone affiliates with, that they wake up and recognize that this is about our kids, and I
Right.
think most of us love our children. We may not parent them the same, but I think most of us love our children, and to I not going to give it to the federal government. They do not love our children. They don't. They don't. They
No,
might
no,
love their children. They
yeah,
don't love our children, and
no, no.
so they should not be in control. And as long as we can keep, as much as we can keep the federal government out of our
Out of it.
schools,
Yeah.
that is my preference. And as much as I'm disappointed in our state legislator, just state legislation in regards to some of the bills that were coming on the floor and didn't make it, uh,
Hmm.
part of me thinks, gosh, if they've done such a crappy job, at the state navigating those bills, maybe we don't want them involved anyways.
Right.
I mean, I've just been so disappointed. I mean, like SB 17 seemed just like a no-brainer.
Right.
Really,
Right.
such a no-brainer. Why
Right.
the heck was that ever excluded? I mean, who the heck believed that you had to have that as an exclusion under a criminal code to be able to teach sex ed? I mean,
Right.
really? That's just absurd.
Right.
Somebody either just wasn't paying attention. I mean, and this would have been such an easy fix. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but it did pass the Senate, but it died in the House
mm,
Education Committee. So
yeah.
the chairman of that committee didn't even give it a hearing.
Well, it's really unfortunate. And I'll be honest with you. I was really taken aback when I realized, being there at State House in a very short period of time, uh, how much they lacked knowledge on any of the topics.
Right.
Nobody had done their own homework. I
No.
mean, you're here listening to bills, you're on the education committee, and you haven't done your own homework, and you're waiting for people to come and tell you. I mean,
Right.
seriously, I just thought, how lazy and
Right.
disappointing. And and the funny thing is you can't read the books out loud on the floor. They
Right.
won't let you because
Right.
they're offensive. You can't read the books at the school board meetings because they're offensive.
Right.
You can't put the content on, all these liberal news stations that want to, attack parents for calling out books that are sexually explicit or, overly violent and
Right.
depicting details of rape that an 11-year-old's reading. And yet we can't say what the words are, on their Facebook page.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
how hypocritical.
It
I
is.
mean,
It
it just
is.
goes to show you. I mean,
Yeah.
it just goes to show you. And parents not wanting these books in the schools does not mean they're banning the books. That is such a crock, because the librarians, they're not letting 100% of the books in the school.
Right.
They're picking and choosing.
Right.
So is that called banning? No, that's not called banning when
No.
they do it. Why are they able to pick and choose?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Why? Because they have our best interest, because they have the title of librarian. I mean, that's just absurd.
Right.
Clearly they're not doing a good job. They need help, or they're intentionally doing a bad job. I mean, somebody needs to help them, because
Right.
these books should not be in the schools.
They shouldn't have, yeah, they
They're
shouldn't have.
inappropriate. At the very least, some sort of parental advisory
Right.
approval. We've got ratings on movies. We've got, they can't, a lot of these apps and things like that, you have to give approval before your kids can
Right.
access them. I mean, you've got all these parental controls on phones and new TVs.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, when did the school library become a free-for-all for every perverted author in the United States?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think if there are enough parents get involved, things will change. Otherwise, the legislators won't do anything, because there is there are lobbyists, right, for the librarians, for the teachers union, for the the superintendents, for the administrators. They all have lobbyists in the state house. But,
right.
Yeah.
No,
But
you're totally right, and it's sad that it's a political game, and the pawns in the game are children.
yeah.
That it's really sad and pathetic, that you would think that people who are in legislation, they have children too, they have grandchildren. You would think that they would have the backbone to do the right thing. And that's what's just shocking to me. And so it makes me think we have the wrong people in office. I do think they're representing the people anymore. I think they've lost sight of what it is that they're supposed to be doing. They shouldn't be representing businesses and organizations. And especially when we're talking about children. I mean, that's just that's the line you can't cross. And I think you're right. I think more parents need to start speaking up, and when they do, I think that they'll start to listen. And quite frankly, they are, and they are. I mean, you're hearing about it everywhere. And these books that are coming out, the more I start getting involved, the more other people in organizations I'm hearing about, and it's getting exposed. And there are school boards that are responding to this positively without it having to get ugly. And I'm really hopeful that more schools will do that, and and not fall back on this exclusionary law. I mean, follow your moral compass.
Right.
If we can't read it at the school board meeting, if I can't come to your house and read these books to your children, or show up at your Christmas dinner and read it to your grandkids, then I mean, it shouldn't be in the schools. And I think most people know that. They just need to take a stand and do the right thing. Be on the right side of history.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, really, really admire your courage. Actually, step out. I mean, you know that you will be attacked.
Oh, I have been, and I know there's more to come.
Yeah, definitely. Once get close to November.
Right.
Probably like in September, October, and you're going to have a lot of people attack you.
Well, I have the mama bear armor on, so
very good. Yeah,
you better not underestimate me.
Exactly. Don't mess with the mama bears.
No, I'm not going anywhere. Well, I appreciate your commitment and interest in all of these topics that are affecting our kids. And I've watched your podcasts and your videos and the people you've interviewed, and I really appreciate the people you're bringing on and the awareness that you're bringing to the community, to Indiana. Well, I don't know how far your reach is going, but I think you've had some tremendous people on. So keep doing what you're doing too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just hope that I can do my part to wake up as many parents as possible.
Yes. And that's where we're at right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.